So I'm gonna get this meeting going. I'm Sean Kennedy. I'm chair of the athletic review. I'm gonna formally call this meeting to order at 6:31. Nice to see everyone. Everyone had a good summer. Just a couple things. We do have two members that are joining us. They aren't here today. Dave DeRosa and Jamie DeVito will be at the next January meeting, December. But to start, just wanted to do acceptance of the January 18th meeting. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
And then acceptance of the April 25th, 2024 special meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, guys. We're just going to move on. We're going to go to sports athletics updates.
So just for the fall season, we are now, the fall season this year started earlier than normal. It was really interesting. Athletic directors met for our league in the summer, midsummer, like August 12th, to have a sportsmanship convention with our student athletes up at Bethel High School. The season started, as I said, a week early, so it was really one of the obstacles I think Wayne and I both faced, along with everybody else in the league, was there were a lot of kids still on summer break when trials were going on. Soccer and volleyball and all the other fall sports started a week earlier than normal. Stratford had 285 fall athletes register, which is representative of about 25% of our student body. Our league has really pushed for this new sportsmanship cup that I wanted to talk about briefly. Our league has pushed in CIAC to really look into the sportsmanship of our coaches, our players, and our fans. So at the end of every league contest, our coaches rate on a scale of 1 to 4, soon to be 1 to 5, what the other team was like as far as their coaching behavior, as far as the kids and the spectators. And these are all tallied at the end of every season. And the winner at the end, there's a lot of calculations that go into it. And they also bring in how well you do on the field of play, is 25% of this. But we had our first trophy, which was a big cup trophy that they presented to Newtown last spring. And we're trying to continue this, but I think the whole point of it is we're really pushing for sportsmanship from everything, from all the levels of play, just not only the coaches and the kids, but also the spectators. It's preached to the parents in our preseason meetings, and it's something that we're really, as a league, trying to strive for. Stratford had their September Athletes of the Month. We had Mary Grace Sutton, our swim captain, and Dylan Asuncion, who's a sophomore captain of the cross-country team. Both have excelled this year and been terrific captains, and we're really proud of them. Girls volleyball recently qualified for the States, and they just won just recently today, and they now have a 10-6 record. Boys golf continues to grow. We are getting surging numbers with boys golf, and I'm really happy to see it. We had 16 kids on the boys golf team. Now, to put that in perspective, when I first started, we had 3, and most of them were part-time athletes at best. We just had someone qualify and get named to the all SWC division team, Max Owen, and really proud of that because it's the first time in I think 14 years that Stratford High School has had someone named to an all division team or anything of that nature. Girls soccer team, they need 1 win and a tie or 2 wins to make the States. So we're hoping this next week they can do that.
How many more games do they have?
2. Oh. They are winnable games, but
That last one is.
it'll be interesting.
We're in the same boat.
Our senior captain, Grace Petrie, just committed to go play soccer at Illinois State University, so that's a prestigious, Division I level for someone coming from Connecticut. Just want to let everybody know we always do the annual Todd Stoltz Memorial Scholarship Game. That's going to take place on Tuesday, November 12th, 6 o'clock. It's faculty versus seniors. And the money, the proceeds that we get go towards this Todd Stoltz Scholarship in his name for senior athletes at the end of the year. Thanksgiving Day game is at Stratford this year. It will be on Thanksgiving morning at 10 a.m. And I'm sure Wayne will talk to it as well. We are combining our Hall of Fame ceremonies, induction ceremonies. And this year we're going to have it at Volley's on December 9th. Bunnell and Stratford Hall of Famers will be inducted. One of the reasons, the consensus behind this is we wanted to bring back more of the Hall of Famers who had already been inducted, and we were seeing that at our ceremonies, there weren't a lot of former Hall of Famers coming. And I can't tell you how much excitement I've received in words from prior athletes that they're going to be able to come to this, and they're all excited about it. So I think it will be a really good event. But that's going to take place at Volley's. For Stratford, we are inducting posthumously Anthony Mack, class of 1980, and Anthony Yearwood, class of 1983.
Rob, I'll be sending some ticket information to SOA for that. I've already spoken to Tom Sportini about that. I'm trying to get that publicized and get that information out.
Now, Max Owen, is that the brother of
Ty.
they just graduated?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what was the recent incident talking about sportsmanship? Was it a soccer coach I read about in Connecticut where he got suspended because he went after the officials in a parking lot?
I mean, I'll be honest with you, we had a lot of meetings about this. It's no secret that officials are dropping like flies, and nobody wants to do it as much as they did before. Some of the same officials that have been doing it for years are still continuing to do it while there's nobody coming up through the ranks. And one of the reasons is they're saying because of the behavior of coaches and spectators throughout the state, they don't feel $100 for a game is worth it. So we're trying to really push the incentive. Now the CIAC has really kicked back. So if a coach now gets if he gets kicked out of a game, he or she gets kicked out of a game, not only do they have to sit the remainder of that game, they have to sit an additional 2 games. They have to go to coaching clinics. They have to pay, which costs money for them to do, and the school gets fined.
Wow.
So that's how much of an emphasis that the state, league, and everything is putting on.
And that's what happened in the recent case I read about.
Jesus. So I didn't read that case, but I had an incident at Bunnell where we had an opposing parent who all game at the boys soccer game was just chirping at the officials. And I said, sir, with all due respect, you made your points. Stop, enough's enough. And lo and behold, so protocol is for the athletic director or site director to escort the officials off to their vehicles before they exit campus. I mean, how ridiculous is that when you think about it? But thankfully in this moment I did, because this gentleman followed us into the parking lot. It was no more than me to you, and just nonstop to the point where he was, expletives at the officials. So we figured out who the parent was, and obviously I reported that to the opposing school's athletic director. But it really is a series of unsportsmanlike conduct from coaches, from players, and I hate to say it, primarily parents that are driving officials out. So we have 306 fall registered athletes, and that equates to about a 30.5% participation rate in sports, which is exciting. We had some pretty prestigious individual recognition early on this fall. Danny Susi, who is going to be going to Wagner College for girls soccer, was the Week 1 Female Game Time CT Player of the Week. In Week 4, the CIAC Serve Pro Athlete of the Week was Diallo Cohen. He's a boys soccer All-Stater who just committed to go to Gettysburg College to continue his career there. So he was recognized at the state level for just his all-around academics. He's a phenomenal kid. Gets involved in the community, and just a great role model for his peers. Diallo happened to be the September Athlete of the Month, in addition to Othelia Olekno, who is a girls volleyball captain. The October Athletes of the Month were Andrew Rain, who's boys cross country, and Marissa DePromio, girls soccer. She just committed to go and play at Western New England. So we've got a lot of kids that are in this fall group that are going on to play at the next level. Back on September 25th at halftime of the Crossover Alliance game, we recognized the back-to-back state championship football team, and former coach Craig Bruno was presented with a plaque in addition to recognition of his players there. So it was certainly a nice ceremony at halftime. Currently, our boys soccer team is undefeated at 9-0-4, and our football team is also undefeated at 4-0. Both are ranked in the top 15 in the state. I think the boys soccer team is 13th or 14th, and the football team right now is 7th. Our unified sports team attended the CIAC Unified Sports Conference held at Staples High School back on September 27th. We had a great opportunity to learn some leadership tactics for our partners to take back with their kids. And just a very inclusive and collaborative environment for those kids to participate in. Boys and girls soccer celebrated the Sterling House, so thank you for coordinating that. I know that the turnout wasn't as great as we would have hoped, but we found out in the 11th hour that we were competing against a weekend full of games.
Yes.
So we'll have to try to plan a little bit better next time, but it was certainly nice to get those kids out on the field and get them recognized in front of their parents and their peers. As Tony had mentioned, we did take several members of the Athletic Leadership Council at Bunnell High School to the CIAC Sportsmanship Conference that was held at AquaTurf on the 7th of this month. Shortly after that, on Wednesday the 9th, Bunnell hosted the Unified Sports SWC Soccer Tournament. We hosted partner schools from Pomprog and Newtown. It was a great afternoon of high school unified soccer. Upcoming, we have the Pink Out Week, which is this week carried into next. So we have our Pink Out volleyball game for breast cancer awareness, followed by soccer on Thursday night as well. And that'll culminate with our football game the following week on the 25th. So we're actually doing 2 weeks just the way that it kind of played out with senior nights happening this week into next. And then as Tony had alluded to, this will be the first year of a combination, in Stratford Hall of Fame induction ceremony at Visano's Four Seasons on December 9th. We are going to be inducting 2 athletes, Chris Temple and Ronnie Rossimondo. So 2 very well-deserving athletes, and very similar to what Tony had said. When we broached this idea of combining it and gearing it more towards not only the current class going in, but also recognizing some of the previous inductees, everybody has been thrilled with this idea. They think it's going to be a really well-attended event, and I'm looking forward to it.
You probably heard Chris Temple's going to be the guest speaker at the Veterans Day event.
Is he?
Yeah. On the 8th.
Yeah, I've gotten to know him through this process and really gotten to get a feel for who he is and what he's all about, and very impressive gentleman.
And did your 2 soccer teams, the boys, play each other twice already? Or?
Yes.
And did you present the Diedrichson?
We have the Diedrichson Cup.
Yeah.
Bunnell retained it, and Stratford retained the girls. We ended up tying, I think, both games.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
0-0 and 3-3.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
And they tied both for the
JV
JVs.
too.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. So how do you decide who gets it?
They retained.
Because yeah.
And does football have a chance to run it out undefeated?
I don't want to put the before the cart.
What's the biggest role?
They call that touching the money, Rob, and I don't want to do
We're
that.
not doing it.
We actually just did it a minute ago on a different team. That's right.
So Brookfield on Friday night they're a good team.
Okay.
I'll just put it
All
that
right,
way. It's
got
going to be a challenge. It's certainly not a cakewalk.
Yeah.
There are some games, obviously, that we're more aware of and maybe scouting a little bit more, but we feel we've got a good team and certainly a lot of facets that I think are going to go well. Knock on wood, hopefully getting into the playoffs.
That would be amazing.
Is the game home or away, right?
We're traveling up to Brookfield Friday. Yeah. So they're 4-0, we're 4-0.
People were shocked by the Massive game, especially after they beat Duquesne the previous week.
Right.
I mean, I'm not going to lie, I anticipated it being a very competitive game. I was pleasantly surprised at how well we dominated on both facets of the ball. We came to play that night, and very proud of the coaching staff and the players and the performance that they put on the field.
Tony, what do you uptake golf is?
Whatever your secret sauce is, I'm going to throw this in.
I mean, one thing is that I've hired a coach that is a teacher in the school. I think it started out, and this gentleman is no longer coaching, but he handed it down to, what happened with boys golf, it was a spring sport, and they moved it to the fall. So the first person that I hired was Brendan Frazick, who was a football coach for St. Joe's. So he had to step down from that position. I have Michael Lapia Jr. now as the coach. Just what they've done in the building as far as getting golf swag things like that. The kids really love it with the golf here, and I think that they're also in tune to what's going on. Golf is much more mainstream than it was when I was a kid. You know, the kids really get into the Masters tournament, they get into different things, and I think that's helped the sport grow.
I know Mike helped with the clinics at Short Creek this summer also.
Yep.
Which is good.
And I think when you have one, it always starts with one. If you have one golfer that is really into it and they get a couple of their friends to come on board, and next thing you know, they're all having fun and they're enjoying themselves, and it's kind of trickled down from there.
And if they're smart, they'll think about it. They can play at Mill River and Blackhawk.
Where else can you go and play 18 for free?
Any other questions? All right, we'll move on to C. D. If you guys could just speak a little bit to how kind of fundraising works and what the money is utilized for. Maybe how it works differently in each sport. So.
Yeah, I think, we kind of give autonomy to our coaches in terms of what their needs are. And I would say that 9 out of 10 requests for fundraising are probably the online solicitation form. What we both do at each of our schools is we're of the belief if the community is going to give to us, we should be giving back to the community. So there's a community service requirement if they're going to perform one of those fundraising online solicitation forms. But whatever funds are raised by a particular team get deposited into their team account. It's their discretion in terms of the coach's staff and possibly including the parents in that conversation in terms of what that money is used for. But primarily it's used for team apparel, it's used for summer camps, fall league, entry fees, and probably the most common use is going to be the senior gifts and then your end of season banquets that each of the teams are financially going to support.
And I just wanted to just piggyback on that. As far as uniforms go, because I know that was one of the things that was discussed, uniforms are a budgeted account that goes through the board and everything else, so no uniforms are purchased through fundraising except this. These are the only exceptions. If a team, for example, for Pink Out, wants to get pink uniforms, we've already ordered, I'm just giving an example, soccer uniforms, basketball uniforms. We do that through our accounts, like from our level. That's not through fundraising. But if the girls on the soccer team want to wear a certain colored sock, I know that our baseball team, for example, does for prostate cancer, whereas they get the light blue jerseys. That's something that they do on their own. So uniforms and things like that all come through, our budget accounts and not through there.
Can I ask some questions on that? So, like, I understand that the uniforming budget comes from like the board and all of that, and like, is there like a rotation cycle? You know what I mean? Because I know obviously we don't give you enough money to like buy every team a new uniform every. So like, is there like a process and like a cycle?
Yep. So it's funny because the civil rights picked Stratford High School to audit last spring to see if we were complying with Title IX, and one of the things they asked for was uniform purchases and what exactly what you're asking about, the rotating schedule. So Wayne and I both are in the same philosophy that we try to replace uniforms every 4 years. Now with that said, there is no way to try to get every single uniform in with our budget to get it all in 1 year. So we have a cycle process. It also depends on this. There are some uniforms, just for example, we say 4 years, 2020, 2021, there were several sports that didn't run that year. So that kind of expanded a year for that to go on. I know for me at Stratford High School, my indoor track coaches were also helping with outdoor track, and they tried to consolidate it into one uniform. So instead of having separate ones, we went to one. But we have basically, and we can print it out with a different rotation. It's usually every 4 years.
Yeah, would you like to share?
Yeah.
One of the other things that we do in a kind of a fiscally responsible way is you take your varsity uniforms that you're replacing, and those get passed down to and again, those are down there for another, 3 to 4 years. So you're getting potentially 7 to 8 years of usage out of a set of uniforms at the varsity and the sub-varsity levels. One of the other factors in terms of whether or not it's, a 4-year replacement versus a 3 or a 5 is usage. You have some sports that are a little bit harder on uniforms than others. If you have a particular team that has a long postseason run, you're almost doing a secondary season added to that, the usage on those uniforms as well. So that's kind of factored in.
Now, probably the biggest expense are the fees for the officials. Where does that fall? Do you have a separate?
We have an account for officials, for police, security, gate workers, custodians when they open the buildings for practices and things like that.
That's got to cost you a lot.
They're not cheap. That's right up there with the transportation cost.
So I mean, we have the accounts that we run on our side. We have a transportation account. We have a boys uniform and equipment and co-ed sports. That's all combined into one account. We have a girls equipment and uniform account. And then we have game workers, whether it's, like you said, if it's officials, police, and so forth.
And then our coaching stipends, obviously, but those are all preset by the contract of the district.
What are some of the options that your teams are doing other than just that snap?
The online solicitation.
Yeah.
So we've, my chair and Dan's have done multiple car washes, so they're still doing kind of the traditional fundraising. We've had some partnerships with some of the restaurants in town where they'll kick back 15 to 20% of whatever the overall bill is to the respective program that's running that fundraiser. So they're doing that. We've had some creative ones where they're doing, I'm not fully versed on it, but it's a gift card calendar. The girls soccer's doing that right now where they're giving away a gift card that is donated each day of the month. So there's a opportunity to win one of those if you're in that raffle.
We've had several car washes. Our volleyball team does an annual mum sale, which has been very successful. We did it last 2 Saturdays ago. And I think when Wayne was talking before about the giving back to the community component, so SnapRaise is a vendor that we use to raise money. It's been great. It started during the COVID when you couldn't do hands-on activities as much, but it gets word out there. You could make a lot of money through it. The problem that we have with SnapRaise or any of these is that the kids aren't really doing much. So the component that we try to put back into it, and I've talked to all my teams, is that when we reach a certain level, if let's say they raise $1,000 per se, then we'll try to give back to the community that, maybe we'll do a clinic, maybe we'll do, raking up at Pender's Field or in the neighborhood area, do something back because we're getting that, so that the donors know that there's not just giving it and the kids aren't doing anything but sitting on their hands.
Well, on occasion, I know some teams have requested money from the Stratford Timers. We give them, I don't know, 500,000, whatever. I forget specific. I think the rest of the team at Stratford at one point. That's always a good thing, for sure. Yeah. And I have to commend both football teams because if we need heavy work done at the Veterans Museum, I call either coach and they'll come up and they've been great.
Good to hear.
Because the rest of us are old and we can't do that.
Stratford High players helped us this summer too, so thank you, Tony. Tyler. Just another question on that. So is that coach-led or is that parent-led or is it a combination of those fundraisers?
The SnapRaise, yeah.
It's family-led.
It's a collaborative approach. Everything ultimately goes through the coach, but a lot of the parents are the ones who make that initial step towards getting it set up and then run it through the coach, and then ultimately the coach brings it to the school administration.
How are the booster clubs supporting? I know in the day, from the stand, from some other things, so parent booster clubs are quite a bit.
I think our booster clubs are run differently because they're separate entities. I can tell you that, like, for my booster club, and Dave DeRosa could talk better about this, but they make their money, and if anyone needs anything, they can request it. At the end of the year, they always give back scholarships to all the senior athletes that have helped out in some way with the Booster Club, or their parents have, or, and then they have a different, it's a whole process. They talk to administration, they talk to me, who's been a good student, who's in the top 25 academics, things like that. And they give a lot of scholarship money out at the end. Just for an example, my boys and girls basketball coaches asked for a shooting machine a couple of years ago. And they gave, I think it was like $500 to $1,000 towards a new shooting machine. So it's used by both my basketball programs right now. I know that they're also do things around Penders Field, like they're getting a new wind, thank God, and we need it really bad, a new windscreen for around the fencing behind the goalpost over there, because the one they have there right now is very worn. So there's things that they'll do in light like this.
They're definitely run differently. One of the challenges that I've had during my tenure as athletic director is the consistent leadership within our booster club. The majority of the funds that are raised through our booster club are done through concessions. And there's a split between the team that works that concession stand and what gets issued or deposited into the team account for their use, or goes back to the booster club that funds the scholarships that are issued out at the end of the year to our senior student athletes. So if a team was to work, say, a concession table or a concession stand, they're going to get X amount of the split. That's going to ultimately, at the end of the season, get deposited into their account. And then if they wanted to go out and buy swag or a major capital expense such as a shooting machine, they need to raise enough money to be able to purchase that.
Do you guys ever turn down things that they bring to you in terms of?
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I had a snap raise request this week. And I looked at their current account balance and said, why? We don't need any additional money, we're good. So yeah, 100%. There's got to be a rationale there, a justification in terms of what they need the money for, where it's going to go towards. Absolutely.
I think it's important to understand, though, with fundraising, we push for equity, but it can't be true equity because it's really about how much the kids put into it. And I'm just going to use as an example, if my girls' golf team has 3 kids on it, they're not going to make the same amount of money through snap raise as the football team does, or the basketball team, or and it's really about how much the kids put into it. Now, with that said, there's other ways to get. If you only have a few kids to fund for apparel, for things, it's a lot easier to fund that. So.
Yeah, you bring up equity, and that's why I asked the question before, because if it's parents or coaches, you're going to have the coaches that are go-getters that might push more, the parents on a certain team that might push more, and then again, that's not equitable to a team that doesn't have any parents or a coach that's invested. So that was my leading question before.
I think it's more to do, I haven't seen it with people that are invested, I've seen it more with just numbers, pure numbers. But then again, you're trying to fund that many more kids for apparel, for different things. So I've seen it be pretty equitable, and I can tell you that, I'm sorry, my girls' golf team last year was able to fundraise a lot. They had a 3-time All-State golfer. They did a lot of things, and they were able to bring a lot of things for those kids, and if the number doesn't equate to, let's say, the football team or the basketball team or the girls lacrosse team did, because there's only a few of them, but they actually got more things from it because there was only a few.
Yeah, I got you.
I think the best way to sum it up is you can't ensure that there's going to be equitable effort, but we can ensure that there's equitable opportunity. And that's ultimately, it comes back on the program leader, it comes back on the parents that are supporting the kids, and then the kids if they're doing a portion of the funds.
Absolutely.
Just a question on the snap raise, because I know it's I sit in the parent perspective of it, and I listen to in these meetings, and you get some parents who have said, why are we doing that when it doesn't, they take a cut, they take a percent. How much of a percentage does snap raise take from the money that's raised?
85%. So the school gets 85% of what is raised. Obviously, they have processing fees on their end. In addition to that, I know that our snap raise rep has been excellent in terms of providing freebies for like our seasonal coaches meeting that we have. They feed all of our coaches. They take care of their customers very well out of that 15% that they collect.
They also gave us this option, which I think has been tremendous. Based on what a team has raised from the year before, they will give them 20% of that in advance to make a purchase, feeling confident they will at least raise that much. So, for example, if in the fall, fall sports haven't started. If a girls' soccer team had raised, I don't know, $10,000 the year before, and they want to purchase apparel right away, but they don't have anything in their account, they will give them the $2,000 in advance so that they can make those purchases, knowing that or feeling confident that they will raise at least 20%.
Our girls' basketball program is taking advantage of that right now. I've got a brand new head coach. There was no fundraising done with the prior regime, and he wanted to get them involved in a fall league, but they didn't have any money to do it, and he wasn't going to put that financial burden on the kids, so he tapped into that that front, if you will, of a portion of whatever they raised through their Snap Raise campaign to be able to get access to those funds to enroll those girls in the fall league, and they're playing right now. So.
That's awesome. So to know, which I don't think people are aware of that. They just hear like, oh, I think 50%, and they're like, oh, let's do this one, this one. So like hearing that.
We have had conversations with one of the primary competitors, but there was some significant security issues that were raised, and as you've heard, if it's too good to be true, it typically is. That's kind of the approach that we took.
Keep in mind for something like that, the old timers,
Yeah.
Okay.
because it might be just people that know, and you guys can help spread the word for, minimal. We can help teams out.
Great.
And the form's online to request form. It's pretty simple.
Any other questions on that? All right, we're down to athletic budget. It's getting to budget season, and athletic review is not just approving policies and getting updates. We also kind of want to get an understanding of the budget and how that works, and how we can advocate for you guys. And so if someone asks us questions in the field, we know how to explain to them. So just kind of give us an overview of the athletic budget and kind of what it's used to supply.
I do want to say one of the most difficult things, because we have to submit the budget in November for the next year.
Yeah.
There are things that arise that we didn't predict. Sometimes the budget has to get allocated for something we didn't originally intend for an emergency situation. The account that we have as far as for the gate receipts and everything, I know that was one of the questions for our athletic accounts. That's the sheet that I have in front of me. I think everybody should have that in front of you. Well, Wayne and I just compiled a bunch of the things that we have to pay for monthly or annually. That is a significant amount of what our expenses are through this. This is through the gate receipts. I just want to give you an example of an emergency situation. A couple of years ago, flood pool, one of the lane lines snapped. To wait to get a purchase order to put it all the way through, and it wasn't something we intended, we used our athletic accounts here to help pay for that. Okay, that was like equipment, it was an emergency thing, just because we wouldn't be able to have a swim meet if we didn't do that. So there are some things, and that's one of the things where we said miscellaneous, time-sensitive purchases or time-sensitive repairs, which are down the list. There's certain things that happen that you don't know.
Maybe the swim program's hard on their equipment, but I can remember a couple of years back, their timing system in the middle of their year just went on them, and so we had to expedite a new cable setup for their timing pads. But again, that's not something that we had anticipated having to put in budget requests for, and so there was a 50-50 split between the two schools to be able to cover that cost, and we did that through what we label our athletic checking account, which is also comprised of the gate receipts.
And I just wanted to run through, not all of these obviously, they're in front of you, but every team when they make the states, there's a CIAC fee to play in the state tournament. Usually $100 to $200 for each team. So we pay for that through this account. We get varsity letters, trophies, awards, things like that. The senior recognition dinner comp tickets, the kids don't pay for that dinner. We pay for that through there. There's captain's council lunches, nutmeg lanes, our bowling teams. We have to pay for use of the lanes, shoes, and that's, that could be close to $2,000 a year. So that's just one example of things. Stratford High School, I don't know if you now own yours, but like we have to pay a monthly fee for the storage bins that are behind Penner's Field, Wi-Fi in the field house, things like that. So there are a lot of they seem like little things, but they do add up. For senior nights, we get flowers for the moms and things like that. So we do use a lot of this money towards monthly expenses.
I think the list that was compiled is a good overview in terms of what would fall under that athletic checking realm versus what we anticipate in terms of, through the budget, through the BOE budget, in terms of putting in the requests each year.
Can you explain how the requests work a little bit in terms of?
So those are primarily out of the 4 accounts that Tony talked about. We have an idea what the increase is going to be each year for our coaching stipends, so we budget for that. Each year the rate of our transportation goes up, so we budget for that. And what we do is we take an average of what the trip length is to kind of project what the costs are going to be. Obviously using the year in the rear as kind of a guideline for that in terms of the length of the trips. But as Tony had said, with postseason success comes additional expenses, and you try to budget accordingly, but you can't predict whether or not you're going to have a team make a deep postseason run, or you're going to have a season like we anticipate this fall. Both of my boys soccer and my football team having deep runs in the state tournament, which is ultimately going to be an expense that comes back on our school for postseason play. In addition to that, we have equipment reconditioning. We budget through the boys and the co-ed account, and then also the girls account. That's going to be primarily your equipment, your replacement basketballs, soccer balls, all those hard goods that you need each and every year. Soccer goals occasionally need to be replaced. Nets for soccer and lacrosse, typically need to be replaced every 2 to 3 years as well. There's just a large list of goods that need to be purchased annually to keep the team afloat.
The recurring items that we have to purchase, that's one part that just, Wayne just said soccer balls, practice soccer balls, basketballs, volleyballs, softballs, baseballs, and then we do get hit with some variables when they say, oh no, these baseballs you had before don't count anymore. They now have to have the stamp on it, and we have to get newer ones. So there's a lot of variables when it comes to that, but they are continuing,
Go ahead. I was just going to say, we talk about the unforeseen circumstances and purchases that we need to make. A couple of years back, they went with a Noxie chest protector for lacrosse. We didn't provide chest protectors for all lacrosse players, so we had to go out and buy 35 to 40 of those at $150 or $175 a piece. It was a significant unexpected expense that we had to make it work. So
What teams are combined these days?
we have boys lacrosse, which Bunnell oversees. We have girls lacrosse, which Stratford High oversees, and then boys swimming, which Bunnell oversees as well.
Regarding transportation, last year we spoke about the rising cost and shortage of bus drivers. Still?
Excuse me. It certainly has been better, but the fall wasn't really the concern. It's the spring when we lose the daylight to be able to play the evening games. Most of your schools that you're traveling to right now for evening soccer events have lights. So to push those bus requests back to 3:30 or 4 o'clock, you can still get that game in. Baseball, softball, golf, in the spring, you can't necessarily do those things. So right now it's been good. I'm thanked. Tony at Durham works, tries to make everything happen for us, and she does a tremendous job with the resources that she has. I know that I've spoken to Pam Mangini, and she's working in the background from what she shared with me in terms of that alternative option that we had discussed in terms of smaller vans or buses to be able to transport the smaller.
Yeah, because I know we did budget that
Yeah.
into, kind of tie it together, like with our, the 18 to 22 program.
Yep.
So that they could use that during the day, and then it would be available in the afternoons for the sports. I know that we purchased, I don't know where we're at the process, but something that we can follow up with.
But weather-wise, I think moving golf to the fall is a good move. I don't know how it's worked out, but it's awfully chilly in mid-March through mid-April for golf.
I mean, our girls still play in the spring.
Yeah.
It makes it easier in the spring because in the past when we had a rain out, usually the boys were playing the next day,
Yeah.
and then you're trying to find
Oh, yeah.
days, and there's only a certain amount of days you're able to use
Yeah.
Black Hawk or Mill River, so
Yeah.
it makes it easy for scheduling purposes for sure. And our boys golf team started, they started like August,
Middle of August.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
They had their first match like August
Yeah.
15th.
Wow.
Yeah, they're
That's good.
good.
How much of your budget that you turn into the Board of Ed is approved? Do you get a fully funded, partially funded, like how does that go? How does that process go for you guys? So you put in a budget of say $500,000 for X, Y, Z. Are you getting $500,000 or are they nitpicking it to death there?
I think they provide us what they can. Obviously, they want to see the athletic departments funded, but there's only so much of the pie to go around. And I think we try to make the best with what we're allocated each year.
Okay.
I think we're both in a situation where we try to anticipate, we try to project for every possible thing that we can, and we know that we're not going to get, say, if the request $75,000, we know that we're not going to get $75,000.
Okay. And so that's where a lot of these things fall into for the side account. Okay.
Now, when one of your fields or one of your courts is used as a neutral site for state tournaments, do you get any of the ticket sales?
Not in the state tournaments.
Nothing.
League tournaments. The reason why I'm open to host, there's actually three, as I'm thinking out loud. One is concessions. It gives us another opportunity for us to raise money at the concession stand or the concession table, depending on where the venue is. Two, it gives my athletic event staff another opportunity to get paid for working the game. And three, I'm very proud of the athletic venues that I have at my school, and I want to show them off. And I know that Tony feels the same way about his venues.
I just think it's unfair that CIH
Yeah.
doesn't, what do they do with all that money?
Above my level.
But even like Short Beach, when travel soccer teams come to play there, people just rave about that little setting down there. Now, what's the feeling about having a nice home tennis courts now at Penders?
I'm excited about it
Yeah,
for a number of reasons. One, I used to have to bus the boys and girls tennis teams to Flood every day for practices.
Yeah.
That's and back, so that's $130 a day that I won't have to spend this year
Yeah.
because it's at Penders. So
And the courts are beautiful.
How many courts?
Four.
yeah, it's really nice.
Seems like a few of these things on your list that you have to find money for isn't fair. That's not in the budget every year. Like the indoor track team at Bethel Lake, what the kids need to bowl and the leasing bins, it shouldn't have to come out of what you collect at the front gate.
We actually raised some money. It was a program-wide initiative where we bought a storage building that replaced the storage unit behind our main grandstand bleachers. Because I got sick and tired of it's not feasible storage because everything just goes inside the door and you can't get to anything. But B, every month having to cut that check for less than ideal storage, it just
Those are all necessities.
long term it's going to serve a great
And for years, it's
Great
doing us,
solution
for
for us.
Worcester, we rented from Eagle, and we have to pay a pickup and delivery fee each season. Finally, we just bought it, and it stays there permanently.
It looks good.
Yeah.
Looks good, Bill.
So part of my monthly payment to Eagle Leasing goes towards owning, it's rent to own.
Oh, yeah.
But I think I'll be over 100 by the time, by the time we own it.
And of course, we were lucky too, at the Worcester one, we had that Vanel's art student who painted a beautiful mural of it. In fact, she won a Google contest, I don't know if you remember.
Oh,
She won $3 and,
Yeah, she did a mural at, in Four Corners too.
oh, yeah,
At the school.
yeah.
Is there anything, as a committee and as a board that you feel that you want us to be advocating for you this year?
I think the big thing is just kind of a holdover from last year in terms of that, the transportation solution. We can continue with that, and seeing about, that being a viable option for both schools after school for some of the smaller teams.
especially for the spring. The spring is the one that hits us the hardest. Winter sports are usually inside, so that's not as much of an issue, but
How about even the sportsmanship piece, anything that we could do? I don't know. That's such
A lot of that is in the hands of our coaches, athletes, and parents.
What's that?
I said a lot of that is in the hands of our coaches,
Yeah.
our athletes, and our parents.
Now, that incident at the basket game, was that our students or was it?
No.
No. Did he arrest anybody?
I don't, are we okay talking about this here?
Things are just under, it's ongoing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah.
But I will say this, they've identified everybody that was involved.
Oh, good.
Other than one-off incidents like the opposing dad and whatever, I'm not sure what Bill's speaking of, like how do you feel like your culture is in general for the whole athletic department?
I will say this, outside of that one incident that you had referenced, Bill, that was a phenomenal game.
Yeah.
A phenomenal crowd, the student section, our students that were there for the right reasons. It
So you
was
get good crowds?
massive crowd. That was not quite Thanksgiving, but it was Thanksgiving-esque, in my opinion,
Nice.
that Friday night. And other than that incident that occurred for that 10 or 15 minutes, and again, I'm not trying to underscore that, it was a significant incident that occurred, and we're going to be meeting about that tomorrow with some of the the leaders, not only within the district, but Stratford Police and everything like that. But it really is a shame that such a nice turnout and an overall nice night was marred by that.
And it's happening too often. It's not just, it happens everywhere, too often.
Too often.
Just to kind of back that, it was a great, and it was unfortunate that something like that had to kind of dampen the whole thing. But one of the things I had mentioned to actually have Borges and the chair and different people is maybe it's something that we need to look at as a board, like with the policy of some of the things, because I know from being there for that event, it's the face covering. That was definitely a tricky issue, especially with the identifying the people involved. I mean, you don't want to tell people, right, it's cool, but certain, I know that they're asked to be removed.
I'm sure that that's going to be a topic of conversation tomorrow at that roundtable discussion. I will say that I saw more medical grade masks on that Friday night than I've seen in probably 6 to 8 months. And I'm just careful to say, where do I draw the line in
Right.
terms of
It's
you
very
have to
tricky.
take that off versus you can keep that on.
Right, or when they've been, I know that, talking to people, they were asked to remove them.
Yep.
But maybe it needs to be like a certain point, right, maybe not, you can't ask somebody to take like a medical mask, but some of the other masks that were on.
Yep.
maybe it's not a matter of move it, it's that we're gonna hold it. You can either put it in your car, or you can collect it immediately, because it was definitely there for a purpose.
I'm sure that will be reviewed tomorrow and discussed how to handle it moving forward.
I think one of the issues that, I noticed just from our football games is not from our student section. It's not even from our parents. It's from, we get a lot of kids that show up there. Kids that don't go to Stratford High School, don't go to the opposing team's high school. They're usually younger, and they come in groups, and they're unattended with parents, and they're there to pretty much cause havoc. Trying to regulate that, or trying to make sure that students provide some kind of an ID that they go to school. We're trying to have more people involved that work in the high schools and the middle schools, like whether it's the resource officers, things like
That's what I
that.
was just gonna ask you, kind of mentioned to me now that you say that, like, is that possible to have, I think, it's helpful to your point, like, if our high school SROs, or even our middle school SROs, are some of the police officers on those games, because they know our kids, like the middle school one, you know what I mean? Like,
I specifically requested both the middle school and our high school SRO that Friday night, either one of them.
The police, it's spotty whether or not you get, for example, I put in for 5 police officers for every football game. One of which, as you mentioned, is supposed to be the Stratford High School SRO. One should be the Worcester SRO. I always put that in. But I can't force them to do that. So far, the Stratford SRO has been able to work. But we also don't know if we're going to get 5 if we put in for 5. And we won't know till that day. I can tell you the first game that we had against Hill House, I asked for 5, I only got 2. So that makes it tremendously, it's a challenge. It's a tremendous challenge, because now you're trying to put one police officer in one station, one in another, and you're leaving another area totally unoccupied with the covers that you're holding.
Yeah, I knew that game with Massac was going to be a big game.
well, there was,
I went over the top in terms of my event staff. They're limited, obviously, in the role and response that they can provide, but obviously their eyes and ears and can communicate our expectations to the spectators.
And you use my best security guards.
Yeah. And there were certainly uniformed officers no more than 10 feet from the vicinity in terms of where the altercation happened.
Now, the kids you talk about, that the younger kids, they don't go in to get inside, they just hang around outside?
They do. One of the reasons that this was brought up before, why I rent porta potties specifically for the football games, is so we can enclose everything for that purpose. Because what was happening, I was given a directive from Lieutenant Eller last year and Public Works that we need to do something, because people were not feeling comfortable going to the bathrooms at Penner's Field, because the kids were congregating around that area, and they were getting harassed. People felt threatened. So that's why we decided to do that, just for the football games. Now, with that said, if anyone needs to use the bathrooms, we escort elderly people that are in need, so they don't have to go to use the porta potties. But just for our night football games, we're going to
There's
use
another expense you have to pay.
Do you guys feel like there should be some type of policy?
In terms of what?
Kind of like what Lisa just mentioned, guards and...
It's going to be tough to enforce. A kid can take it down, and then all of a sudden they're in a different part of the area. I do agree with you, though. It makes things a lot easier, because my initial thought is, when I see somebody wearing, a hood, a mask, and you can barely see any part of their face, I'm thinking that, especially if it's 70 degrees outside, I'm concerned. But I don't know if it's really.
It's tricky.
No, it's really-
We're getting into the winter months, so even myself as the athletic director, overseeing the event, I'm probably going to have a ski mask on, or not a ski mask, but a ski hat, And if I've got my jacket bundled up, you know, who's to say that you can't easily identify me? But
We don't
I
be
do
hypocritical.
agree, you know, yeah, there's a fine line that you have to walk, and we're certainly aware of it, and I'm looking forward to the conversation tomorrow to see what others think is appropriate for these types of events. And, we're certainly aware of it. We're cognizant of the impact that it has of not being able to readily identify spectators at athletic events.
Would it be easier daytime games, not nighttime? I think some cities went to that.
I've asked about that because, you know, I know St. Joe's plays their games in the afternoon. A lot of other schools do. I know Stratford, I think, and Benel both used to. I'm in favor of it, but I know that there's been pushback because Friday Night Lights.
It's not cool, yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
definitely.
But that would be a solution that would help significantly, I know that. We all know that.
It's also a challenge for the coaches that aren't working in a school system and getting out at 2:30 or 3 o'clock to be able to get there for a 3:30 or 4 o'clock afternoon.
I mean, a Saturday, move to Saturday.
I did move my games up 1 hour, so our football games now start at 6. That made a big difference, especially in I had 2 September games.
Yeah.
Just because it was still, darkness was just starting to set in. That 1 hour made a huge difference, and it wasn't so much, I didn't get much pushback as far as the earlier start time because
We've moved from 7 to 6:30.
Even to 6:30. Thank you. I mean, there was a lot of good discussion over there. Anything else that anyone wants to add, or any questions that anyone wants to ask? If not, I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Motion to adjourn.